So, can borderlines love? People have different views on the borderlines' ability to love. And obviously, no two people are alike. So, no two borderlines are exactly alike. But my view is that generally, borderlines love how the idealized version of you, which they have created in their head, makes them feel. It's that idealized version which they so strongly attach to because it makes them feel good about themselves. And a lot of people talk about this borderline intensity, how they have this certain intensity about themselves. A lot of the intensity comes because they're associating with this greatness in their mind. They've created this persona of greatness and they associate with that. And a lot of the intensity comes from that connection which they've created. And at the beginning of a relationship with somebody with borderline personality disorder, when they're with you, they hold that idealization very strongly, such that even when they're physically with you, even though they're interacting with the real version of you that's in front of them, they don't really see you for who you are, but they still see you as being this imaginary version which they've created. But over time, as they start to realize that the idealized version of you which they've created is not supported by the real world you, because you're human, you have flaws, you can't always make them feel ultra great. You can't always make them feel on top of the world. In other words, you're simply human, and you can't perpetually hold that perfection symbol image which they've created, which they've kind of labeled you as at the beginning. That soon starts to fall apart because you're just a human being. And when they see that, they start putting you off the pedestal. And when the borderline starts putting you off the pedestal because you're not really holding up to that great version which they've created in their mind of you, then they start to feel less good. The idea of you doesn't make them feel great anymore. Associating with you doesn't make them feel so special. And borderlines do like to feel special. So when they start to see you as just being nothing more than some mediocre human being, that's where they realize, okay, just the thought of you, just being in your presence doesn't make them feel great. Well, now you're really going to have to work for it. You're going to have to really work for it to make them feel special. And that's where borderlines start to push you away. That's where they start to devalue you. That's where they start to triangulate you. They want to make you jealous, and they do things to want to make you chase them to make them feel special. Of course, throughout that process, they usually end up pushing people away. They have this way about themselves where they know how to push people away. But as soon as you're gone, they put you back on the pedestal because when you're not physically around them anymore and they start thinking about you, and maybe they think of some of the good things, some of your good qualities. And they also like to, borderlines have this way of enhancing certain things in their own minds. All of a sudden, they do put you back on that pedestal. They see you as being much higher value again than before. And, if you're off dating somebody new, finding happiness elsewhere, they really feel they're missing out. And a lot of times that's where borderlines, they try to make their way back in your life. And borderlines, they're the kind of people where when they realize they've pushed somebody away where they didn't really mean to, they didn't want to do that, even though they did it deliberately, they can get quite depressed. They can feel quite down. And sometimes they'll threaten self-harm, maybe even threaten suicide to see if that's what it takes to pull you back. So the borderline relationship is this chronic push-pull where at the beginning, they pull you in really hard But once they have you and they see you're just a human being, they do push you quite hard away. But when they lose you, they want to pull you back in. And sometimes they do have this way about themselves. When they'll push you away and you don't come back, then they feel abandoned. And a lot of times they do get suicidal, and they can't really shake that feeling off very easily. So they try to distract themselves by sometimes self-harm, or sometimes just unhealthy habits, or sometimes they'll make you feel that if you don't entertain them, they'll do something bad to themselves. That it's all very manipulative, obviously, but it's this push-pull, and they go to extreme measures to satisfy whatever they need, whether it's to push you away. They'll devalue, triangulate quite heavily, and then to pull you back in, they'll try to draw you in through these tactics. And sometimes these tactics are not just fake. Sometimes they really mean what they say when they say they're going to self-harm or whatnot. But, of course, if the other person just puts that boundary up, keeps the wall up, no longer entertains them, then, there's not but so much the person can do. So the borderline is forced to accept it, which isn't always done easily, but it can be very hard for the partner who is pushed away sometimes to not go through the push-pull a few times. So sometimes they find themselves going through the relationship cycle 3 or 4 times before they realize enough is enough. It's similar to narcissistic relationships a little bit in that way, except for what drives the borderline to have those behaviors, and what drives them to push and push you away and pull you back in is slightly different. Narcissists can be very sadistic, very, trying to get narcissistic supply from your misery and all that, whereas borderlines just have these deep abandonment wounds and these deep needs to know that you care, and they create this imaginary version of you which they can't always uphold. So it creates this kind of chaos that shows itself in the way they behave towards you. But yeah, it can be very toxic. So just be aware who you're dealing with, and always make sure that you have the right boundaries in place when you're with the right people.